Why is everyone flexing? Flex containers are here. Well, they've been out a while with Elemental Beta, but they're now in alpha with Elemental 3.6. So they're here for us to use and play and experiment with. Now, anyone who's a little bit worried or scared about using it, don't be. We're going to go through it step by step, and there's loads of other tutorials out there as well. If you've got an existing website with sections and columns, you're not going to lose that, okay? However, if you convert or activate the new setting, you will have to start getting used to containers. But please don't worry, because even if you activate it, you won't lose it on your existing website unless you build a new section, or what we will come to know as a container. Now, straight off the bat, why is Flex Container such a big thing at the moment? Why are people getting excited? Well, mainly because you are massively reducing the amount of code that you will have within your sections or your page. And for those of you that are out there still complain about, well, Elemental has too much back-end coding and DOM and this and that, I don't believe that's entirely true, because I find you can optimize really, really amazingly. However, this is going to make things even better, okay? I can't stress that enough. So let's get on to activating the setting. Inside your WordPress, obviously make sure you got Elemental 3.6. 3.6.1 is now out at the time of recording this. You want to go to Settings, then go to Experiments, scroll down until you get to Flexbox Container and make that active. It'll probably say default, which means it's not activated. So make sure you hit active, go down and then save that. I'm on one of my test websites, so don't complain about how this hero banner looks. It's just a test website, okay? We have a section. We still have over here column 1. And we have column 2. You can't miss it. We've got an image, we've got a background image, we've got header, subheader, whatever, and a button. Okay, pretty simple. So even though I've activated, and this is an existing section on an existing test page, okay, look, you can see it all down here, existing items, okay. You can still see section, and you can still see the column. We've established that. But when I click on section, do you notice anything different? You can't miss it. It says the word convert. Now, here's the beauty about what Elemental have done, and I've got to thank them so much for this. Anyone that is still getting used to, well, how does Flex Container work, and am I going to get my head around it? You can now convert an existing section, which will not replace your previous section, so that you can see what it looks like in Container. Let's go ahead and click Convert. Now, as soon as I do that, this section here is still section and columns. Look, I still have my settings, my padding, my whatever, my layout. I can go to columns. I still have all my settings here for that. Vertical align, horizontal align. It's all there. I can still add things to it and mess around. Look, I can still drop in an image if I want. I have not lost anything. However, if I deleted this section and I create it again from scratch, I'm going to have to get used to the Flex Container or the container or the containers, however you want to phrase it, okay? But for now, I want to reassure you that you're not losing what you've got, okay? So if you don't want to make that move just yet, don't worry about your website suddenly going boop in a puff of smoke the minute you activate. Now over here, we have the duplicated section. So when we convert, I love how it does this. It creates a copy below. I think that's so cool, the way they did that. Now when we click here, in fact, I just to let you know, it's a slightly different color as well. We have a more of a, like an aqua-y, bluey, turquoise blue. It's not even aqua, a turquoise blue. Whereas here, this is more of a murkier, swampier blue. A tealy blue. Someone's going to start shouting hex colors at me. You get the idea. Now, when we click here and we go to the layout now, or when we click it, it now says edit container. It does not say edit section like we had above. We still have boxed. We still have the 985 width I've done just for the purposes of this screen. And we have the height as well. What we're missing, though, is the word minimum height. So let's just go back up again. I think it's important to stress this out. So when we go here, we had box width. We had columns gap. That's also missing. We had height, which was minimum height fit to screen. And then we had pixel, the width and the height. Well, now, if we go down here, I always felt that the VW was a little bit not totally needed because you had the width here anyway. But we have the VW here, so you'd put 100 if you wanted full width. And then we have the height. So if you want the full screen height, you would do 100 VH. For anyone who's like going, oh my God, fit to screen is missing. No, it's not. I would always have said use VH100 in the first place anyway, because fit to screen was never properly fit to screen, for those of you that know what I'm talking about. We still have the overflow as well. But here's the key bit. We now have items. Before you had structure. 50, 50%, 33, 33, 33%, 25, 25, 25, and all that, okay? So how was your column stacking up? Now what we have is a different structure. So I'm going to start again from scratch with a completely blank section or container. Don't worry about that, but I want to just get you to understand this. We have in here what we would have called two columns. But here's what you have to get your head around, okay? This is a container, and this is a container as well. So we've gone from one section, two columns, to now having one container with two containers within. Container, container. Now, you got to get used to this, and I can imagine there's going to be people out there where in the past when we advise someone, yeah, do X to your column, we now got to make sure they understand we're talking about the container within a container. So we've got to think about our terminology a little bit here. But I'm not going to do any videos about terminology. That's for other people. So now we have this container and we have another container here. Now, if we just go back to the flex container and the items, the direction says row, column, reversed row, and reversed column. Row means that whenever we add in content or a container, and I will go over this later, okay, don't worry, from scratch. So every time we add in any items or any columns, not columns, containers, they will sit in a row. So we have items 1 and items 2, or container 1 and container 2. I've got to get my wording right. If I now do this and column, container 2 has now gone below container 1. Does that make sense? Look, this is row, this is column. If I put it back to row, reversed row will flip them, right? Pretty simple there. And let's go to column and now do reversed column. So we now go like that. Pretty simple that, isn't it? I mean, that is so amazingly good. It's like watching magic on your screen and there's a wizard somewhere with a stick doing something. Right, okay, now let's look a completely brand new container and containers within and content to better understand the structure and where a lot of the settings sit. So I've got a blank page over here. I'm going to click this here and now we will see that we have lots of structures available to us. So before we just converted and it just converted, a lot of these just look like standard sections that you would have been familiar with, but now these are containers. So this is a container. This is a container with two containers within, three containers within a container. But look, here's what I love. Look at the creativity we have now here. For some of you that might have wanted to do a particular mosaic or masonry type of style, but you weren't too sure how to do it. Or you were implementing inner sections. I mean, most of us have been guilty of that at some point in our lives, okay? You know, section, column, inner sections, columns within columns, whatever going on galore, right? Now we can start flexing things around, and when you start to experiment with some of these, you can have a lot of fun. I'm going to start with a very basic section for now. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to make this be a boxed width of, we're going to go with a boxed width of 900, just so you can see it completely on the screen I'm using at the moment. And I'm going to set the minimum height to be a VH of 50. I'm going to make it 50%, just so you can see what's happening here, okay? I'm now going to go down to items. Now, at the moment, it doesn't matter what I do here, really. Nothing's going to change because there's no content. Let's go and add something in for starters. So let's drop in a header. Here's where we now have to just take a bit of a pause and review what we've done, even with just one header. This is where you just got to get your head around things, okay? If I click on the container, box 900, and we have just one item we've added in at the moment. Now, normally if you were to add in a header into a section, the header, when you click on it or hover over it, the blue bars would go horizontally because it normally said it was now occupying the full 100% width of whatever section or column you added in. Do you know what I mean? Unless you go and modify the margin and the padding or made it a custom width or whatever, it always occupied the full 100%. But look at the header now. When I move over it, it's actually going vertically. So it's now saying it's taking up, occupying the space there. So what happens if I now go over and I now want to add in a text editor? Now look, can you see this? In the past, when you go to do a text editor, where would it have sat? Below the header. Now why is that? Because the header's taking up 100%, and the text editor would also assume to be taking up 100% as well. Now when you drop it in, it actually goes to the right. And this is where you just got to get your head around a little bit. We're now moving away from where things just sat below one another. They actually go to the side. But you can change it to go back below if you want. Well, how do you do that? Let's go back into our section. Let's go to this area here where we have items. Before, you would have had structure there, like I've said, but now you have all of this direction, align items, and justify content. At the moment, it is set to go in the row direction. So every time you add an item, it's going to go in the row. Let's just go in and add in a button. Look, I can put it anywhere to the left and right of anything we have here. Let's just stick it over there. We'll just have the word click here for now. Let's go back into the section, go back to item, and let's now pick column. That's what you're used to seeing, right? Header, text, button, everything sat below one another. Let's go back to row. Reverse the row, gajink, right? That pretty much makes sense. Let's put it into column. Reverse the column, ba-boom. Okay, so what it does is it reverses it, but what it's also done is aligned it almost to the bottom. And this is where we are now going to play around with this as well. So let me now put this back into the column order, just because we're very familiar with working with this at the moment. I'm now going to align the items. It is at the moment at Flex Start. 99% of the time, everything will be the very first setting you have available anyway. What if we go for a center? Remember, we are still working. Sorry, let me just put it the right way around. There we go, column. It's now put it into the center of the column because it's now treating this entire container, okay, as your area or your estate to work with. If I change it to row, we would get a different layout, okay? But at the moment, I'm just doing this as a column. So it's still assuming that we are occupying 100% of the width. Well, it's not assuming. It is occupying 100% of the width. If I go to flex end, it goes over there. If I do stretch, well, it's kind of the same as really doing the left align, unless you've got other items within there. Let's just put this back to flex start. Let me now put this onto row, right? So we're now back to what we had before. Header, text, and the button. This is now flex start at the top. Now watch what happens when we align it to the center. You know what's going to happen. It's moved it to the middle of the page. And the flex end? Yep. And the stretch, well, that's kind of at the top, unless you've got other items in there as well. So let's get our head around this, okay? When you are in a row, okay, your items are next door to one another. But your estate actually runs below. So when you center a line, your items, even though they're here, like that, ding, 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 they go down the page to the center. If you're using a column, so your items are now below one another, okay, so they're now below one another, your estate now runs here. So when you center, you go there. And it's something you're going to have to get your head around, and you will get used to it, believe me, because once you do it, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's the other way around or whatever. Now at the moment for my items, I'm going to set them to be centered, and the direction is a row. Now all of these buttons over here, I have to be honest, they're not really going to do much at the moment, okay? Just because of the estate I'm currently using at the moment. However, if I set this to be a column, right, and this is currently centered, if I do flex start, it goes to the top. If I do justify center, not only now are we in the center of the page, center horizontally, but we're also central vertically. Let me just take that off, okay? Remember, look, you're going to have to get used to this. So we are currently in a column, and when I align the item, it goes to the center. But we're not in the center of the page. Here's where you would do it with the center there. So that then moves it down. Flex end would take it down, but then you have space between, space around, and space evenly. So if you've got like buttons where you want you always want the button to always be level or not level, in line with other buttons in different containers, space between always works quite well for that. So not only can you align it horizontally, but you can also align it vertically. But when you come to rows, I will be honest, like, look, let me just take out this text box for now, okay? because the text box was stretching it. If we go back over here now, so we only have 2 items, and we are currently aligned to be, let me get this right. There we go. So we're aligned in the center, okay, at the moment, and we're using a row. If I go over here, it will now put it in the center, flex N, space between, space around, space evenly, okay? So if you've got too many items in there, the space betweens don't really do much. But if you've got few items, you can start to really lay out what you want to do. So in effect, I hope you're getting this at the moment, okay? You can start to really play around with things, and we haven't even moved out of the parent container yet. We're still in the parent container. But what if, okay, what if, right, let's just go back over here. You've got your header and your button, side by side, whatever, but you now want to add in another item here. So let's now go over and get an image. Now, when I try and pick up this image, the image is always going to go to the left or right. So I now have an image there, and it's now gone to the right, because at the moment, we are still in the row direction, and we also are center aligned. In fact, let's just make this all be center as well. Okay, so center, okay? Everything is center at the moment. Let's now click on this image, and let's just pick in a image like that. We'll make it full resolution, and let's make the style be, let's just go with something like that. There we go. Okay, bit of a shadow effect as well. Brilliant, wonderful. That is now center aligned, vertically and horizontally, but I want that image to be below. And this is where you might go, well, okay, now I've got a little bit of a problem here, because if I go to the item, you know, like, well, I want it to be below, but I want the button to be to the right of the header. Well, you know, what's going on here? How do I do that? And then you're going to start to play around with these settings, and you're going to go, well, it's now not doing what I want. If I click on the image and I go to advanced, okay, you will now notice for every item you add, you do have these options as well. But even so, what you're going to find is that even if I start to do this, okay, it's not really going to put it below the header. I still have a problem. Look, let me show you. Look, I'm just going to click all of these options. Nothing happens. What about the order? Well, if I now click this item here, the image will jump before the header. And if I do that, it jumps to the other side again. You can even do custom. So I could say put this in, so I've given this a custom order of 2. I'm going to go over here to the button, and I'm going to go to the order, and I'm going to make this be a 3. So just because you put 2, it won't automatically put there. You might need to adjust the one before as well. So now we have 1, 2, and 3. Well, that's great, but we still don't have the image below the header. What is going on, everyone? So we still have to do a bit of work. I'm just going to undo what I did there with the custom positioning. So how do I get my image to sit below the header and the button? Well, I'm going to click back into my container. In fact, I should mention at this point, because I haven't touched on it, you still have all of your background styling and all of that. You still have all of that active, okay? So don't feel like you're losing anything there. How do I get that image below the header? Well, if I click on the container, I could go to items, and I could go, well, let's just do that instead. We've already established that is not going to serve my purpose, because the button has now gone below as well. If I click the button, however, and I go to advanced, this is not going to change anything, because remember, we've now gone to columns, so our estate is now horizontal. All this is going to do is start to rearrange where the button sits. But again, and we can rearrange the order as well. However, what we don't have is the facility to make that button sit next door to the header. We're getting there, okay? Believe me, we are getting there. So now what we're going to do is go into our section, okay? Go to our widget element list, whatever you want to call it, and we are going to grab another container. So I'm going to grab this container like that. You can see it. Look, there it is. I'm going to drop it. Now, right now, you're all going, whoa, hold on, that's an inner section. No, it's not, okay? Well, it is, but it's not, because A, it's called container, and it's not inner section. But, you know, stay with me on this. I'm now going to pick this header up, okay, and I'm going to put this header in here, and I'm going to put the button in. Now, instantly, this container has gone into the column layout. So I'm going to click on this container, go to items, and I'm going to make this be a row. Can you see what's happening right now? And this item that we have here at the moment, if I just click over here on the entire section, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say make it be a, not a flex start. Sorry, let me get this right. Align items. There we go. See, even I get it wrong. So I've now aligned the item with the image to be below the header and the button. So we have a container that contains how I've decided to do my layout. Of course, though, you know, I'm going to go back into my container. I'm going to go over here and I'm now going to make the height of this be 100. So it's a full height. I'm going to click over onto my section and I'm now going to go to items and I'm going to say make this be justified to the top. But then I'm going to go to my advanced and I'm going to say, hey, give me some padding of about, let's just go with 150. No, we'll go with 100. We'll go with 100. There we go. So I'm not losing the facility to do margins and paddings or anything like that. But by using a container, I've put the button after the header. And by the way, you know, look, I can click into this container and everything I was doing before, I can do here. So I could now switch this to be a column. I could like reverse it as well. You know, the column, the container, the row, whatever you want. You can start to, I mean, remember, right, you're not going to get much here because this is a thin container at the moment. So all of these options will matter more when you start to do the column positioning there. But over here, I could now do something like that. Space around, space evenly. You don't lose any of that functionality. So once you get your head round using a section, you can do all the same thing within the column. Because before, you had certain settings for the section, right? And then you had certain settings for the column. And you had to do one thing here and one thing there. Now, whatever you can do with the parent container, you can do with the child container as well, okay? So, and you can even do your gaps as well between your items. In fact, this is something quite important. This one is really, really important. If I go back into container and make this a column, right? We normally always had like a 20 pixel default spacing. When you messed around with it, you could change your spacing. Well, if you now switch to row, you can now do that here as well. So before in the past, if you had like a button next to a container, you would go to your button and you would say, oh, we need to give it about 20 pixel difference. You can now start to make it very consistent in how you apply that evenly across the patch. Right, so far we've got a container, right? And we have an image over here. But what if you want to have another container to the right of this container? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click over here. Okay, sorry, I'm going to click onto this section. I'm going to go to layout, go to items, and I'm going to ensure that we are working with a row. Number one, we're working with a row, okay? So we have a container and we just have an image that isn't sat in a container except the parent one. Let me now go over here and grab this container, okay, and drop in another one. So what we now have is container 1, container 2, and we have an image. I'm now going to click over here for the parent container, click on items, and I'm now going to make it into a column. The problem you have here as soon as you do that is that container 2 has now gone below container 1. But I want container 1 to sit next to container... No, I want container 2 to sit next door to container 1. And in container 2, we will drop in... How about we go and drop in an icon like that, okay? I'm going to go over to my container, go to items. I'm going to just make it left aligned like that. I don't have to click row because it is already a row, but I'm just going to do that for now. I'm just going to flick this back to be the row like that, okay? Just so we can understand it better. Container 1, container 2, container 3. Your estate is your vertical, okay? But we want to do a mixture of horizontal and want to have the image below, okay? I think I've said that so many times now. If we go over to the parent, okay, we do have a function called wrap. What wrap does is it starts to define if certain things will be on their own line or in the same line as well. But when you do that, it's almost like going back to doing column, isn't it? Look, let me take it off. There's your column approach. Let's put it as a row and let's wrap it. There's a bit more spacing, obviously. You'd have to mess around with your justified content and things like that. But that has now moved things down. The wrap. However, the button, the icon is still not there. How many times am I going to say it? We need that icon to be up here. So we are going to go over to this column over here, or the container, the child container, okay? Go to layout, and I am going to set this to be a percentage width of, I'm going to go with 40% for now. And I'm also going to go over to container 2, and I'm also going to give that a percentage of 40% as well. By doing that, can you see what's happened? By wrapping it, this is still, or container 3 really, is, if I go over here to the layout, this is 100%. I can even put 100 in if I want. You don't have to, but I can do. I can go to container 1, and I can pick it up and I can start, I can start to drag it if I want, okay? Now, even though we've now got that to work, you will notice the elements gap. This is actually quite important. If I drag it, there comes a point where you hit, well, let me put it into percentage. That's probably going to work better. There comes a point where you go so far that now you've undone the wrapping, because now you're creating so much gap between your containers or widgets, okay, that you're now forcing it to go onto another line. So just watch out for what you do there, okay? And you might find it's a bit safer to maybe use margins or something like that. One thing you will notice, though, and you can't ignore it, is we got container 1 and container 2. And then we got container 3, and there's a pretty big gap there. I want container 3 to be higher up. I want it to be right underneath over here. So how do I do that? This is where I've gone back to the parent section, and where I had the minimum height and I got a VH. This is where I found if I did this, it sort of brought it closer. So this is one that's a bit of a... It's a bit of an issue I don't like, though. What if I've got my height set at like 100? I really want my items to be closer together. Well, down here, we have a function called align content. And we will get used to this. All of us will over time. If I click center, it brings everything down to the center, even though over here, if I go to advanced, there is 100 padding there already. So I go back to layout, okay, and items. For the parent container, we have flex start. It moves everything to the top. Flex end, obviously. Space around, space evenly, etc. So if I put this onto now flex start, we're now back to where we were. So let me undo everything I've just done there. Okay, so this is where we were with our slight problem, where it was way too far apart than where it needs to be. Look at where header 1 and the icon sits at the moment. I'm going to hit it on flex start. That image or container 3 is now right near the top. We have all this as state over here because it's currently a VH of 100, I think it is. But in effect, we now have container 1 and we have container 2 and we got container 3 underneath. So with a bit of practice, you can start to maneuver and arrange things in a very unique way. We do have to change our mindset a little bit because we're very much used to working with columns. But please do remember, if I just scroll down here, I've just done all of that with messing around with containers. I could have gone over here and picked, say, this layout here, where we clearly have container 1, container 2, and container 3. I could now get rid of that one there. And there we go, we've got container 3, and I could increase it or extend it or whatever I want to do with it. So there is some beauty with what you can do with some of the layouts they already give you to save you trying to work it out above. And remember, these containers, I could pick this up and look, I can drop it into, well, probably helps if I add an item in first. There we go, we'll add in an image like that. And I'm now going to drop in another container into container 3. So let's now go to our navigator, in case you didn't believe me. But here is container 3, and we've now got container 4 within it. Oh, and container 5, because I dropped it in again. So you can still do inner sections if you want, but we're not calling them inner sections now, because they are much more lighter in what you can do. So my big recommendation is that you do play around with it, and you will get a little bit frustrated the first time you do it because you're now having to change your mindset a little bit. However, the flexibility this gives us with moving, arranging things around, I think is so super good. I mean, I can just go in here and start to rearrange or put things around without having to go, well, is it in the section? Is it in the column? You now start thinking about your containers. And don't forget, all right, even though I've done something on the container here, I can go to the icon and I can still start to move things around, all right, with the item as well, without having to do margins and padding, which is what a lot of us kind of did in the past. I look forward to your comments. There will be loads more videos coming out where I'm really going to play and start honing in on doing things. where we're focusing on the container aspect. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. Let me know how you're getting on. How are you finding it with the fact that now you are doing containers within containers maybe, or that you have this freedom? Or how do you feel about the layout? You know, this whole thing with the reverse and the columns and everything. A lot of fun you can have. A lot of frustration. But that comes along with the learning. And hey, we're all going to be here to help you out. Take care, and I'll see you soon.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win at life. I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean.